Tonight, we are going to a place where the horizon stretches out so far that it seems to curve away from the earth itself. We are standing at the very edge of the American frontier, right at that fragile moment where the day surrenders to the twilight. The sun is not just setting, it is retreating, pulling its warmth away from the tall grass like a tide going out, leaving behind a silence that feels heavy and absolute. The sky above is bruising into shades of deep violet and charcoal gray, and the wind, that constant, relentless companion of the plains, is beginning to sharpen its teeth. It is not a howling wind, not yet. It is a low, steady press against your back, cutting through the layers of your coat, finding the small gaps in your collar, whispering a warning against your skin. You realize, standing there beside the wagon wheel that is coated in a thin layer of dust and frost, that there is nothing between you and the infinite night except what your own hands can build. There is no town waiting for you over the next ridge. There are no lights flickering in the distance to promise a warm meal or a soft bed. You have arrived, but you have arrived at a place that does not care if you stay or if you fade away. The grass here whispers as it bends, a dry, rustling sound that stretches for miles in every direction. This is the reality of the homestead. This is not the romanticized painting of the West. This is the cold, hard dirt of survival. You feel the temperature dropping, not degree by degree, but as a physical weight settling on your shoulders. It tests your patience, it tests your planning, and soon it will test your body. You understand, perhaps for the first time, that you cannot fight this cold. You can only learn to hide within it. So, before you settle in, before the darkness fully takes the land, take a moment to breathe in the sharp air. Let your shoulders drop. Listen to the quiet, and let us walk together into the long winter night. You are part of a pioneer family that has pushed the wheels of your wagon until they could turn no more. You have stopped because the light has failed, and to move forward in the dark is to invite disaster. This is a common story, a piece of mainstream history often forgotten, that for thousands of families moving west in the 19th century, home was simply where the oxen stopped when the sun went down. Tonight, the ground beneath your boots is hard, frozen solid by a week of bitter winds. You look around for shelter, for the comforting silhouette of trees, but the plains are stingy with their timber. There is only the rolling ocean of grass and the exposed earth. You feel the pressure of time ticking away, not on a clock, but in the fading color of the western sky. Every minute that passes steals a little more heat from your fingers, making the buckles on the harness harder to undo, making the wood of the wagon feel like iron against your skin. The first night is always the gatekeeper. It is the night that determines if you have the will to endure the 100 nights that will follow. You unload the wagon with movements that are stiff and clumsy. The cold has already seeped into your joints. You lift a crate, and it feels heavier than it did at noon. The wood groans softly as it is moved, a sharp cracking sound in the thin air. Even the metal rims of the wheels sound different now, dull and flat against the frozen ground. The air itself feels thin, dry, and hostile. It rasps against your throat when you inhale. There is an old belief, whispered among the homesteaders, that the way you sleep on your first night sets the pattern for the winter. If you toss and turn, the season will be restless and cruel. If you can find stillness, the winter might just let you pass. It is likely a superstition born of fear, but tonight you hold on to it. You work past the point of exhaustion because you know that rest is a luxury you must purchase with labor. Your family moves around you like shadows. There is no energy left for idle chatter. Words are conserved just like heat. Instructions are given in gestures or low murmurs. You guide the children, not with harsh words, but with a firm hand on their shoulders, keeping them moving. To stop is to freeze. You learned that lesson miles back. You feel it the moment you pause to wipe your brow, that deep, penetrating chill that starts in your toes and climbs up your legs. Motion is life here. Stillness is the enemy. As the last of the light bleeds out of the sky, the sounds of the prairie shift. The wind drops lower, brushing through the dry stalks of grass like the hem of a dress dragging over a floor. Somewhere, miles away, a coyote calls out, a lonely yipping sound that emphasizes just how much empty space surrounds you. You manage to spark a fire, and for a moment, the flare of orange light feels like a victory. But as it settles into a small, trembling circle of flame, you realize how insignificant it is against the ocean of black night that has swallowed the world. History tells us that many settlers spent these first nights under the open sky or huddled beneath the canvas of a wagon, exposed to the raw elements before a proper cabin could be raised. You crouch near the fire, holding your hands out, palms forward. The heat is intense on your skin, almost stinging, but your back remains freezing cold. It's a dance of rotation, warming one side, then the other, never truly comfortable, just managing the discomfort. You understand now why the old journals speak of the fire not as a luxury, but as a living member of the family that must be fed and protected at all costs. If the fire dies, the night wins. You watch the flames eat through the dry brush you collected, consuming it too quickly. There is a fear here, the fear of burning through your fuel before the sun returns. It is a valid fear. Scholars still debate how many pioneers exhausted their resources out of panic rather than necessity in these early moments. Sleep seems impossible to imagine in this exposure. The ground is unforgivingly hard, radiating a cold that seems to pull the heat right out of your body. You lay out the blankets, layer after layer of wool and quilt, creating a barrier between you and the frozen earth. You do not undress. That is a habit for warmer places, for safer houses. Here you loosen your boots but keep them on. You keep your coat buttoned. You are sleeping, but you are also waiting. You are ready to move if the wind shifts, if the fire jumps, if the weather turns. As you lie down, looking up, the sky is startling. Without the haze of a town, the stars are hard, bright points of ice scattered across the velvet dark. It is beautiful, yes, but it is a cold beauty. It offers no comfort, only the reminder of how small you are. You close your eyes, and the cold presses against your eyelids. You drift, not into deep sleep, but into a shallow, watchful rest. You are learning the first rule of the frontier. Survival is not about being comfortable, it's about enduring discomfort long enough to see the sun rise. Morning comes, but it brings no warmth. You wake stiff, your breath pluming in white clouds before your face. The fire has collapsed into a pile of gray ash and dull red coals, barely breathing. The moment you throw off the blanket, the cold rushes in to claim the space you occupied. Your muscles protest as you stand. It is a deep ache, the kind that settles in the bones. But you move. You have to. You understand now that last night was just the first verse of a very long song. Tonight will come again, and it will be colder, and you must be ready. You look at the campsite, exposed on all sides. The wind slides across the plains without a single tree to break its momentum. It hits you with full force. You know you need walls. You need a shell. Constructing a shelter on the plains is not an act of architecture. It is an act of desperation. You are not building for beauty. You are building to block the wind. Mainstream history often overlooks the fact that many early cabins were built in a frenzy, thrown together in days rather than weeks, simply to provide a break against the gale. You feel the wind searching for purchase in your clothes as you work. You gather what you have: logs hauled from the river bottom miles away, planks from the wagon, sod cut from the earth itself. Everything is a potential wall. You lift, you carry, you set. The rhythm of the work warms you. Lift, set, brace, repeat. Your breath settles into a cadence. The sound of an axe biting into wood rings out, sharp and lonely in the vastness. It is a small sound, but it is a human sound, a declaration that you are here and you intend to stay. The cabin rises, rough and ugly. The logs are uneven. The mud chinking is slapped into the gaps with haste. It leans slightly. It would not pass inspection back east. But you do not care about straight lines. You care about the wind. You care about the draft. You pack mud and grass into every crack, your fingers burning from the contact with the cold, wet earth. The smell of damp soil and raw wood fills the air. It is a primitive scent, but to you, it smells like safety. You learn quickly that the earth itself is your best insulation. You dig the floor down a few feet, sinking the cabin into the prairie.
You pile dirt against the outer walls, thickening them, wrapping the house in a blanket of sod. This technique, borrowed from the land and from indigenous wisdom, turns the ground from an enemy into an ally. The earth holds a steady temperature, warmer than the biting air. As the structure takes shape, it looks fragile against the scale of the landscape. There are gaps in the roof. The door is just a heavy blanket hung over a frame. But when you step inside, the air changes. It is still cold, yes, but it is still. The wind is reduced to a muffled presence outside, scratching at the walls but unable to enter. Your breath lingers in the air instead of being snatched away. You light the fire in the rough hearth, and for the first time the smoke curls up and stays for a moment, filling the room with a thick, hazy warmth. It stings your eyes, but you welcome it. Smoke means heat. You sit back against the rough logs, your family huddled close. You can feel the change in the atmosphere. The cabin is not just a pile of wood, it is a container for your lives. Night arrives again, but this time it meets resistance. You lie down on the hard-packed dirt floor, but this time you have walls. You listen to the fire crackle, a contained sound now. The wind prowls outside, sounding frustrated that it cannot reach you. You are still fully dressed, your boots still laced, but your sleep is deeper. You are learning the rhythm. You are adapting. You wake before dawn, not because you are rested, but because the cold has found a way in. It always does. It slips through the settling logs, through the thin roof. It touches your face and wakes you. You rise in the dark, finding the embers of the fire, coaxing them back to life. This is the routine. This is the contract you have made with winter. You will tend the fire, and in exchange, you will survive. As the weeks stretch into months, the cabin becomes a universe unto itself. You learn every draft, every cold corner. You know that the air near the floor is freezing, so you build a raised platform for the bed, lifting yourself up into the pool of warmer air that gathers near the ceiling. It is a simple adjustment, but it changes everything. You stack crates and boards, creating a sleeping loft. When you lie down up there, the air feels different, softer, kinder. You realize that survival is a game of inches. A few feet of elevation can mean the difference between shivering all night and sleeping soundly. You begin to hang quilts and spare clothing along the walls, not for decoration, but to add layers of insulation. The cabin begins to look like a nest, lined with fabric and fur. It smells of wool, smokewood, and living bodies. It is a dense, heavy smell, but it is the scent of life. Fuel becomes your obsession. On the treeless plains, you cannot simply chop down a forest. You learn to read the land for anything that will burn. You walk the prairie, eyes scanning the ground for dried buffalo chips, for twisted knots of hay, for woody stalks of brush. You gather it with a seriousness that borders on reverence. Every piece of fuel you find is a few minutes of warmth. You stack them inside, keeping them dry. You learn to burn them efficiently. You do not build roaring bonfires. You build small, tight fires that smolder and radiate heat slowly. You bank the coals at night, covering them with ash to keep the heart of the fire alive until morning. Losing the fire is a disaster you cannot afford. It takes too much energy to start from scratch with frozen fingers. So, you tend it like a garden, watching it, feeding it, respecting it.
The silence of the winter can be deafening. During the day, there is work to break it. The sound of the axe, the scrape of the shovel, the lowing of the oxen. But at night, when the wind dies down, the silence presses against your ears. It is vast and empty. It amplifies the small sounds inside the cabin. The shifting of a log in the fire sounds like a gunshot. The breathing of your children sounds like a rhythm of the tides. You find yourself listening intently, your ears straining for something, anything in the void outside. When a wolf howls miles away, it is almost a relief. It is a sign of life. You find comfort in the proximity of your animals. On the coldest nights, you might bring the chickens inside or a young calf that is struggling. Their body heat adds to yours. Their breathing joins the chorus of the room. It breaks the barrier between human and animal, reducing you all to living things simply trying to stay warm. Illness is the specter that haunts the cabin. In this confined space, with fresh air limited to conserve heat, sickness spreads like a shadow. You watch your children closely. A cough is not just a cough, it is a threat. A fever is a crisis. When someone falls ill, the routine changes. The sick person is moved to the warmest spot. right by the fire. Extra quilts are piled on. The rest of the family adjusts, giving up their comfort to protect the vulnerable. You sit up at night, listening to the labored breathing, feeding the fire stick by stick, measuring out the night in heartbeats. You brew teas from dried herbs, holding the steaming cup to fevered lips, hoping the warmth will do what medicine cannot. These are the longest nights. The fear is sharp and bright, cutting through the fatigue. But when the fever breaks, when the breathing eases, the relief is profound. It bonds you together more tightly than any happy memory could. You begin to notice that your mind is changing too. The isolation fosters an inward turn. You think less about the world you left behind and more about the immediate reality in front of you. Your world has shrunk to the four walls of the cabin and the patch of sky visible through the single small window. You find yourself staring into the fire for hours, losing track of time. It is a trance-like state, a hibernation of the mind. You conserve mental energy just as you conserve physical energy. You speak less. Arguments flare up and die down quickly because sustaining anger takes too much effort. You find a strange peace in the monotony. The repetitive tasks, gathering fuel, cooking, mending, sleeping, become a meditation. You are not bored, you are focused. You are living entirely in the present tense. As winter deepens, the snow piles up against the door. You have to push hard to open it each morning, carving a trench to the woodpile, to the animal shelter. The world outside is erased, turned into a blank sheet of white. The light is blindingly bright during the day, reflecting off the snow, stinging your eyes. You learn to squint, to look at the ground. Inside, the cabin is dim and smoky. The contrast between the blinding white outside and the dark, soot-stained interior is jarring. You exist in a cave. You mark the passage of time not by dates on a calendar, but by the dwindling of the flour sack, the lowering of the woodpile. You count the days until spring, not with impatience, but with a grim determination. You are enduring. There comes a night when the wind changes. It is subtle, a shift in the tone of the whistle through the chinking. It doesn't sound as sharp. The air that seeps in smells different, damp, heavy, hinting at thaw. You lie in bed and listen. You know better than to hope too early. False springs are cruel on the frontier. They lure you out only to freeze you again. But your body knows. The tension in your shoulders eases slightly. The fire seems to burn a little easier. You sleep more soundly than you have in months. When true spring finally arrives, it is a messy, muddy affair. The snow melts into slush, turning the ground around the cabin into a quagmire. The roof leaks. The air is filled with the sound of dripping water. But the sun has teeth again. It touches your face, and you feel actual warmth, not just the absence of cold. You step outside without your coat for a moment, just to feel it. The horizon is no longer a threat. It is a promise. You look at your cabin, this rough pile of logs and mud that has held you, and you feel a strange affection for it. It is scarred, smoky, and dirty, but it held. You held. You look at your family. They are thinner, pale from the long darkness, their clothes worn and patched. But they are here. They are standing. You have survived the test. You have learned the language of the cold, the economy of warmth, the discipline of the fire. You have learned that you can live with less than you thought, and that you are stronger than you knew. The winter has taken things from you, comfort, ease, perhaps a measure of innocence, but it has given you something back. It has given you the certainty of your own resilience. You turn back to the work of the day, the planting, the building, the moving forward. The long night is over, the sun is up, and you are ready for whatever comes next. As you stand there in the mud of early spring, you realize that the silence of the winter has settled into you. You don't need to fill the air with words anymore. You understand the value of a well-banked fire, the weight of a good quilt, the taste of hot broth. These things are not mundane to you anymore. They're sacred. You walk over to the woodpile, instinct taking over, and you grab a few logs to bring inside. Even though the sun is shining, even though the worst is past, you will keep the fire burning tonight. Just a small one, just enough to keep the shadows at bay. Because you know now, deep in your bones, that the warmth is something you make, and it is something you must keep. The day moves on. The grass begins to green. The birds return, filling the air with noise that feels almost too loud after the months of wind and silence. Life expands again. The horizon calls. But part of you will always remain in that cabin, in the glow of the embers, in the quiet shared survival of the longest winter.
And as you close your eyes tonight, safe and warm, you will remember the cold not with fear, but with the respect due to a worthy adversary that you met and withstood and outlasted. Good night.